Tinfoil hat. Oh, what the fuck are you guys even talking about?
Global controls will have to be imposed, and a world governing body will be created to enforce them.
Welcome to Tinfoil Hat. We go deep, homeboy. Aaron, open your mind. Drink from the fountain of knowledge. There's lizard people everywhere. That's some interdimensional shit. Wake up, Aaron.
This is only the beginning.
Dude, you just blew my mind.
Are you ready to get your mind blown?
Good morning, Swarm, and welcome to Tinfoil Hat. You know I am. You know I'm here to do. I'm here too. Joining me, not today, Xavier Guerrero out in a bus doing drugs. And then join us on the ones and twos. Jay Nice, Juicy Johnny, J Dog, Johnny Woodard. Live from the Wise Wolf Gold and Silver Studios. Go to SamTripoli.gold. Use the promo code Tinfoil. Join the Wolf Pack down to $50 a month. Precious metals goes all the way up to 10 grand. Whatever you want, get in on it because the fiat dollars are in trouble. Before we get into our guests, real quick, you go to SamTripoli.com. I'm going to be at La Jolla at the end of the month on the 24th, 25th, and 26th. I just signed up for Costa Mesa on the 30th. I haven't got the link for that yet. And then I'm in New Jersey on the 21st and the 22nd of June. Grab those tickets now at SamTripoli.com. Very excited to have this guest on. She's this was a great conversation, right, Johnny?
It was amazing. Yeah.
It was not the bangers, okay?
It was a little disturbing, honestly. Like
it was disturbing in an interesting way. We're very excited. She's an author, she's a researcher, and she's a photographer. And we're very excited to talk to Shannon Taggart.
Drink from the fountain.
All right, so let's get into it. Very excited to have this next guest on. She's from the homeland. She's currently not there right now, but we'll get into all that. She is an author. She is an artist. Please welcome to the show, Shannon Taggart. How are you, Shannon?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Glad we could finally make this happen. I got your book. It's beautiful. Very excited to have it for Shannon. For those who may not be familiar with you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where our listeners can find you?
Okay, yeah, my name is Shannon Taggart, and I am, I started out as a photojournalist and trying to photograph mediums and psychics. And my journey took me on this 20-year trek, which became a fine art project, really. And I became a researcher and sort of an outsider anthropologist in a sense. And that was all compiled in a book called Séance, which was first published in 2019. And you can find me. My website is my name, shannontaggart.com. I also host a big summer event in Lilydale, New York, which is the town which is home to the world's largest spiritualist community. And so that'll be happening at the end of July of this year. And that's all on my site, my book too.
And your website is?
My name, shannontaggart.com.
Okay, all the links below. Very excited to talk to you. Johnny doesn't believe me, but I come from a long line of psychics. My grandmother, who passed very early in my life, which is a very interesting. When you meet people older in life and they're like, I lost my grandpa. I'm like, how old is your grandpa? They're like 95. I'm like, oh, you're so blessed to have them for as long as you did. My grandma died very early in my life. I was still in elementary school when she passed because she had to go in for surgery and she died in the hospital, which really is tragic.
Oh, dude, that's so crazy. My grandpa died before I was born. My mother was 12 because he went in with a heart thing, and when they were injecting the contrast dye to do a test, it just liquid. His blockage was so bad that was enough to he was done.
Really?
Dude. Out, 40 years old.
Wow. That's crazy.
40. Yeah, that's why I'm a
That's
little
so
paranoid
tragic.
about heart stuff.
Yeah, I get it. You should get your heart checked
Oh, I believe
constantly.
me. It's all.
But the point is,
But yeah.
I never got to get to know her as much as I probably would have loved to. You know, and it's very weird. And I think about this all the time when I raise my children. Is like, you just tend to gravitate to one side of the family more than the other. Like and they tend to say it's along the mothers. They've done studies. You tend to be closer to your mother's side than your father's side. I don't know why. So I every time I discipline my child, I'm like, oh, dude, I'm going to run her to the other side. I have to show her love and show the kids love and all that stuff. But long story short, is like I never got to meet my grandmother, and my cousin Donna was like about a little over a year ago was telling me that that side of the family, which was she was Sicilian, I had an Italian Sicilian family, were psychics, and my grandmother would read the tea leaves to the local neighborhood. They would all go and meet with her, and like I never knew that about my grandma on that side. I never knew that at all, and I've always felt I had psychic powers, even though Johnny doesn't believe in that stuff. I really do 100% believe that, and I do believe it's why this show is done well, because we somewhat predict what's going on. And the long story of that is like, so when you're like I'm photographing psychics and stuff like that. What are you doing with that? How do you take pictures of that?
Yeah, that's really the hard question. So when I first started, I mean, I just thought I'd spend a couple weeks making like a basic photojournalistic documentary about this quirky little town called Lilydale, where everybody believed they talked to the dead. And I realized how incredibly complicated and fascinating it was, and also how it's been really written out of our history, especially American history specifically. And I just kept at it. But yes, I was confronted with the question, like, how do you photograph invisible things? And I came up with a few different ways of approaching that, like throughout the project. And that's what really made things very interesting, as I started to take a very ambiguous approach and really kind of play with photography, like the limits of photography, and try to, I had a lot of photographic synchronicities. I started being really experimental with the work I was doing. And, so the book ended up being as much about the photographic process as it was about being a medium or being a spiritualist. So it's kind of there's a lot of conceptual elements in a way, but yeah, it's incredibly challenging to photograph invisible things.
So why Lilydale? Is there something about Lilydale? Is that the name of the city you were talking about? Is there something about that area?
Well, okay, yeah. So spiritualism is this American religion, new religious movement that erupted in upstate New York in the 1800s. And Lilydale is, there used to be millions and millions of people who were doing seances and experimenting with spiritualism. And Lilydale is kind of like the last bastion of spiritualism in America. It's a tiny town where everybody who lives there is a spiritualist, and most are mediums. And
really?
Yeah. And it's an hour away from Buffalo, so it's near where I grew up.
I want to come visit that place.
Yeah, well, so do you know anything about the burned over district?
No. I'd love to hear about it.
See, so this is so wild. So you're from upstate New York.
I was born in Buffalo, and I live in I'm from Cortland, New York, which is just outside of Syracuse.
Okay, but you were born in Buffalo?
Yeah.
Oh, weird. Okay, cool. So the area, like between Albany and Buffalo, there's, probably like just outside of Rochester is the main hotbed, but there was this 20-mile square, like small area. I don't know the exact locations, but it's central New York, like outside of Rochester would be like where the main area of the burned over district is. Now, that's where like Mormonism started, spiritualism started, the Oneida experimental like free love community. There was like 30 different sects of different new religious movements and radical spirituality, including like the Shakers were up there. And that's where the women's rights movement started too. So it was like this hotbed of all this very intense metaphysical activity. Like, I think Mormonism started actually like, just a few miles from where spiritualism started.
Really? Mormonism started in upstate New York.
Yeah, that's where he found the tablets.
Did you know that? I did not know that.
It's totally,
New York,
it's this really bizarre piece of religious history. Nothing like it's ever happened it's like a totally unique moment. And even growing up there, they don't talk about it. It's kind of like this hidden, it's kind of been written out of the history books. And that's what like really shocked me. There's even like a spirit architecture house, like not far from Cortland. I don't know exactly. It's Georgetown. Is that?
Yeah, I've heard
Cortland?
of Georgetown. Yeah. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, so the spiritualism started when these two young girls in a cabin with their family, they started saying they were talking to the spirit of this dead guy buried beneath their house. And they started doing this like coded rapping. And then eventually they went to Rochester and they started doing these live seances. And all of the radicals, like the reformers, the progressives, kind of became spiritualists. Like, actually, the reason that like women's rights movement really took off was because of spiritualism, because they would allow women to speak in trance in public, because it was like totally, really dangerous for women to speak in public.
Back in the day, they put you underwater.
Yeah, I mean, even at the women's rights movement, which happened, nearby in Seneca Falls, the women at their own women's rights convention were afraid to talk like in public there. That's how intense it was.
So when we talk about the history of it is people always like, this country was founded by as a Christian country. I go, I don't think it was. I think it was founded by Freemasons, and there's and the imagery. There's so much deeper to it. And, I'm on a spiritual journey. I'm not going to get too much into it because I've talked about it 1,000 times, but I'm open-minded to all of it. Like, I think it's all things. I don't think it's one way. I think everybody can have a seat at the table.
Well, can I just that's what I was going to say, because I think it's both. I don't think those are mutually exclusive, the Christianity and the Masonic angle, because
I think
if
it's
you
all
look
of
at
it.
if you look at their letters, like a lot of them talk about God and Jesus and all this stuff in their letters they exchanged to each other, which are now, mostly preserved. But yeah, I think it's both of those things.
I think it's all of it, dude.
And deism and many other things. Yeah.
We've talked much about our thoughts on mysticism and where that fits into the whole thing. And, this kind of shoving us into like certain boxes, like, and this is set into this and set into that, I think is a giant psyop. And I think you just keep going farther and farther back. I just think he gets more and more into, just like I'm open-minded to all of it. So I'm so interested in this. And I can't believe I never knew anything about any of this. It is so crazy as I study like these things that are going on in our country. And I think so much of it is like this cultural Marxism of just like not allowing the new generation to have the knowledge of the last generation. And like to grow up so close to where you're talking about and to never hear any of this is like so shocking to me.
How close would you be, Sam?
Rochester is an hour away from me.
Oh yeah, that would be extremely close to where I'm talking, because I guess technically where the Fox thing started was like Newark, Geneva, so that would be closer to Cortland.
Geneva for sure. There's a big college up there.
Yeah, no, I mean it's totally wild. Like in all of religious history, it's like a very strange moment. And I kind of have a metaphysical theory about like possibly why it happened.
Okay, I'm listening.
Okay, so, they built the Erie Canal, right there, right? And so they rip up the land and put the water in, and then you're connecting the Great Lakes with the ocean. And that is really like the first super highway. That's how all the American treasure got transported across out of the world. And you could argue that's the birthplace of American capitalism, right? So
Holy shit.
materialist capitalism, and you have, this scientific materialist age and this powerful force of capitalism, which is very materialistic. And then you have this eruption of basically shamanism and all sorts of stuff. I mean, in these new religious movements, you have this metaphysical complete eruption right there. And so that's kind of my theory.
I find that very interesting too, dude. It's like, and that gets into more of the sorcery of the that I think we also battle. And it's very weird because I think a lot of people, if maybe we had this conversation 8 years ago, people might have a much different reaction to it than what people are now open. Because I just did like Adam Carolla, right? And he was bringing up about how like the people in the state of California, the politicians don't seem to care. And he doesn't understand why. And like, for me, it's all energy vampire shit, right? And like, that gets to me into sorcery. And like, just like creating this, like as I drove into the studio today, every single way I went, there was road construction. You're like, part of me is like, oh, they're fixing roads. But part of me is like, why aren't they doing this at night when there's no traffic? Yeah. Why are they doing this in the middle of the day when they know everybody's trying to get around? And it's like, that's just raising our anxiety, our depression, our commute. We all know the longer you commute, the more miserable you are. Like, to me, that's, so when you get into like, the gold and all that stuff, that makes sense to me. That fits into this, like, and again, the laws of duality, light and dark, where we have like these light workers, but that means there's also darkness. So I find that all interesting for sure, dude.
Yeah, and it's sort of like it's like the spirit world was kind of there was mesmerism too going on. So that's, about that. That's kind of like a laying of hands healing. That was another thing that was happening. So all of this stuff kind of spoke to the sovereignty of the individual, and a lot of like alternative medicine, things like marriage reform and women's rights, and also like the power of the church, and the fear that the idea of hell, like it was so solid, because so spiritualists, they kind of like, also one of their tenets is like there's no hell and there's no death, right? So, you can critique that, but that force really, people really needed to be free from their fear of hell. There was a lot of fire and brimstone kind of religion around, where, damning people to hell and unborn children to hell. And so it was kind of like a response to that. And also this response to like that we should be afraid of death because of hell. And
I agree.
It's also very ancient, like having, in our culture, it's right now, in academia, the media, like in rationalist, our secular humanist kind of lens that we have on society, like it's totally bizarre. But in every other culture throughout every other time, it's not weird at all. That that you would be able to talk to spirits or the spirits of the dead.
Again, this is totally how I see the world, and we're kind of in this place where I'm just getting more and more spiritual, but I 100% believe that what you're talking about to me is something that's resonated with me a long time, like a couple of years ago, which was scarcity versus abundance. And there's this push into scarcity that you only have so many days to live, and you only live once. And if you don't take advantage of all these days, you'll lose these days. So you got to listen to us. And if you don't listen to us, we're going to give you this. And like, to me, like, we could have some people going, oh, dude, this is all hocus pocus, woo-woo bullshit. Fine. But when you get into what they did to medicine and you see how they took away all this holistic shit and pushed us into this petroleum-based, like, vaccines, pills, all this stuff.
Nutrition. Look what they did in nutrition. They told us the things that were exactly unhealthy for us were the things we
Everything
should
they
eat.
tell you to do is the exact opposite of what you're supposed to do. It's the inverted world. And you can't just dismiss that stuff. That, to me, is all energy. So everything you're saying is, I completely agree. If you go to the average person, is history a lie? And they say, yeah, then you got to understand it's like, this is part of what they killed. This is part of what they killed. And there's a lot of like, and the Vatican is a big part of that. The Vatican has pushed this, like, this hell, pushed this, like, sin, pushed all this stuff that just all about controlling you. Hey guys, real quick, I want to tell you about our boy James McMahon and Copy My Crypto. Listen, guys, has it pissed you off to watch crypto fly up in prices for a decade and you still have done nothing about it? It makes sense. Crypto's complicated and really boring. Well, here's the good news. You don't need to know a thing about crypto to make money like so many have. The CopyMyCrypto.com membership site shows you the exact cryptos that YouTuber James McMahon personally owns, which means you just got to copy him. It's like having a big brother who knows what he's doing. You don't need to know a thing about crypto or how to invest. Just simply copy along. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about James. He runs the Crypto with James YouTube channel, which has over 54,000 subscribers. In the summer of 2020, he told his viewers to buy 26 cryptos. Had you put $100 into each, it went on to be well worth $123,000. Of the 26 cryptos, his top pick of the year, the one he singled out called Phantom, went up 692 times from when he said to buy it, okay? That one call alone has retired a number of people, including guys in their 20s and 30s. Remember, this is public knowledge. You can go to YouTube and verify for yourself. So if you'd like to join the 2,800 members who have copied James, then pause what you're doing and head over to copymycrypto.com/TFH. That's copymycrypto.com/TFH. That's TFH. You'll not only find proof of everything I said, but my viewers will get a full access for just $1. Yes, you've missed out on Bitcoin, but there's over 2 million other cryptos. Do you really think you've missed out on all of it? Guys, don't waste your time. Go to the site and read it. Once again, that's copymycrypto.com/TFH. Guys, it's ended money worries for so many. It may just do the same for you. Copymycrypto.com/TFH.
Have you seen that they're publishing, this was news last week, that they're creating what is it, like a spiritual guide now for like possession and stuff? It was bizarre.
I don't trust any of it.
Let me just see if I can find the headline.
I don't trust any
for
of it.
apparitions is what it is. Let's see. Vatican to publish updated norms for investigating alleged apparitions.
Yeah,
And
I don't trust any of it. I don't trust anything that comes out of the Vatican.
But I think it's part of this new move to see UFOs as possibly spiritual.
Yeah.
I think that they're aligning themselves with, that future that we seem to be stepping into, so that people approach that in the way that the Vatican wants them to,
Well, is that good or bad?
I don't know. They're not out yet. They're working on it. So we'll see what the guidelines are.
But again, that gets into like this whole thing where we see a movement coming and they like to co-opt it, right? Like every time. When you bring up women's rights, it's like I think most people agree in equality and all that stuff, and then you get these people like Gloria Steinem, who's like an FBI informant, and you're like, okay, well, now it just pushes it into a totally different direction. And that's just what I believe. Like these organic movements happen and then they weaponize it. So when you tell me that the Vatican is like, oh, we're going to tell you how to look at like UFOs, I'm like, okay, I don't trust that. And then when you hear that people are like, oh, maybe these aren't aliens from planets, but maybe they're spiritual entities, angels and demons. That's interesting me. Okay, I'm talking too much. Where do you want to go? What do you want to talk about? Because I love this topic.
Well, I'll just how I ended up at Lilydale was my cousin went there when I was a I was a teenager, and in Lilydale, like in the summer, it kind of open. It's kind of like a little camp, and they have healing services and message services and classes. And a message service is when you just go and you sit like either on a bench in the woods or in their auditorium anonymously, and they'll have a medium stand in the front and they pick people out for messages. And so this medium picked out my cousin from the crowd and said, her voice got really masculine, and she said, she started talking as she said it was her grandfather who wanted her to know he choked to death and that's how he died. And my cousin was like, oh my God, this woman is nuts, because neither of my grandfathers died of choking. And so she went home and she was telling her parents about the experience, because she thought it was just like really crazy and really funny. And my father's brother, her father, said, no, actually, that's true. And it turns out that the grandfather we shared, he was dying of brain cancer, but what his actual cause of death was a choking incident, but we didn't know that, and we never talked about it. So yeah,
I believe in all that stuff, dude. I think everything's energy. I think there's spirits everywhere. I think it's super. What do you think spirits are?
Me? Well, I don't know. I mean, sometimes with mediumship, it's like you'll watch somebody give a message and you'll know something profound is happening. And sometimes it'll really feel like, oh, they're talking to a spirit. And other times it'll feel like, oh, they're perceiving time in a different way. It feels more like they're able to see through time rather than talking to an actual spirit. And then sometimes it just seems like, really, really fake, but then later you realize, oh my God, if you reinterpret it, it actually was really meaningful. So I don't know. I think there's a lot going on with our psychic faculties and, whatever the spirit world is. It's very complicated stuff. And I think it ties into creativity and survival and perform. I mean, it's like a very, this whole like aspect of our, mediumship, or whether we talk to spirits, I think plays into a lot of aspects of our life that we don't really think about very much. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
If you had to guess where we live and what we live on, or what our reality is, what do you think it is? Because I've always said it's like, I think it's way more complex than they want to tell us. All things are possible. It's energy and,
yes,
what are your thoughts?
Okay, I can give you my thoughts, because I actually have just kind of clarified a way of talking about this. But so I think that the world, the universe, whatever it is, it's not like a finite thing that for us to like figure out, or that science will ever conquer. It's more of like principles and like, principles that exist. There's a bedrock to reality, but we kind of complete reality with our perception. So it's almost like we're always storytelling about reality. We like live in our own story. We're helping to create the universe with our own, like we're like the other piece of the puzzle. And so that's why it's more like the universe is this like big, ever changing, ever being completed thing that our consciousness is co-creative with. And that's why it's such a mystery. You'll never figure out something that's constantly being created.
Is that why you would say that there seems to be no coherent agreement on what reality is. Even if you go into what we could see as some kind of psyop of, let's take a Donald Trump or a Hillary Clinton, that there's no agreement on any of this, that everybody has their own version of that story, because there is no set story, but it's almost the observer is influencing the story almost in a weird way.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like it's, myth throughout, time is like always been a way of, a true elements of the world. Like they're like myth. And even if you look at right now, what's going on in our society, like post-Trump, post-COVID, it's like people can look at the exact same data, but they live in completely different stories with that data. And that how they look at the data is how their reality is created. And the world kind of has this way of presenting whatever you want it to be to you. You know what I mean? Like
no, 100%. And it's almost so I talk about this all the time, but it's like so much of our modern day technology is what I call hardwired mysticism. Like they've figured out how to hardwire it. It's like when people go, how do you take pictures what do you take? You kind of take pictures of like psychic stuff, right? Like, so how do you take a picture of a psychic stuff? Because you have to hope that it's replicated every time that you're there picturing it, right? Because if it doesn't, then you might be taking pictures of something that hasn't shown up, in as an observer from outside of, as we're having this conversation. But to me, like, they've been studying this mysticism for so long, hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, that they've gotten to the point where they can hardwire it, and they know how to. So maybe an algorithm is some sort of mysticism, and it's a way to affect your reality. And so like the presentation of data is presented to you in a way that will affect because through the data of what you've liked and what you haven't liked on the internet, it knows what you're into and what you're not into, and it feeds into what you like by feeding you more of it in a way that affects how you see the data. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. And also, like, talking about photography, I've always felt that photography was telepathic. Like, there was something about embedding your observation into this black box, like this exchange with reality through observation. Like when I first got into photography, my favorite photographer was Deanne Arbus, and I thought, oh my gosh, when I looked at her pictures, I felt like I could feel what she was thinking or know what she was thinking, or she was showing me inside of her mind somehow. That's just really what I felt when I looked at her pictures. And, then when I started studying photography, I learned that, photographers call it the photographer's eye. And we all know what that is. That's when somebody is really good with the camera. And how are you good with the camera? It's your observation, like something about your perceptive qualities are being trapped in your view of reality through that box. Like, and you're working with light and time. So it's very metaphysical. I think there's something really, really, we forget how spooky and strange photography is because it's so, common to us. But I think we forget that.
Do you think that's the same no matter the photographic medium, digital or film?
Yeah. I mean, I started out film, but now I use digital. I know a lot of people say that the analog process, there is something special about the analog process, but like now
it's a pain in the ass, though. Let's be honest.
What's a pain in the ass?
Working with film, it's a huge pain in the ass.
But there was some kind of quality to that, right?
No, yeah, and you could get a lot. To me, it seems like you could get a lot more kind of spooky things that were probably just due to the exposure process, like double exposures and stuff like that people have passed off for you. I mean, that used to be one of the great sources of fakery in the 1800s. You know, it's these double exposures. Like you'd see like someone standing over someone's shoulder, a ghostly figure, and it's really, you know, I mean, it's a double exposure.
What's a double exposure?
Just where two photos are exposed together, you know, kind of, and you combine them, and people will be like, I couldn't possibly imagine. There's this famously, well, Mary Todd Lincoln was famously a big fan of those kinds of photographs.
Yeah, there's a picture of Mary Todd Lincoln in my book with the ghost of Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, which is, I mean, the guy doesn't look like Abraham Lincoln, really, does he? Do you think? I mean, I don't know. That to me is, I'm not sure about
Johnny,
that.
stop player hating on Ghost.
No, I'm not on Ghost at all. I just think the double exposure thing that's why I think the digital is the way to go. Because if you're capturing digitally, I don't have much doubt about it, you know.
So
yeah.
go on. Sorry.
Go ahead. Well, yeah, I mean, the whole history of spirit photography, that's another thing that was written out, you know, that people were making these types of pictures. That was not in any of the photo textbooks that I studied from. And that's a very complicated history. I sort of see the pictures like you're talking about, like the ghosted Abraham Lincoln. It's almost like this iconography of spiritualism. So it's like, as Catholics use painting, spiritualists kind of used photography to, like, you know, spread the teachings and get a visual. Like belief requires a visual. But that said, it does get really complicated, the whole spirit photography thing, because there is some high strangeness to it as well.
I'd like to hear about it.
Yeah.
So, well, for my book, like when I was in all these situations, I started to have like a few accidental, like happy accidents with my camera, right? Like, so one of the first ones was I was in this seance situation where they, you know, a lot of times they use red light. And it was
crazy. I was just thinking about red light. I literally was. I'll tell the story after. Go on.
Okay, so there's a phenomenon in spiritualism called transfiguration, where you would have the medium sit under a red light, and you know it's really low light, and if the situation is right, you can see it does seem as if the person is. You could see faces sometimes go over. It's, you know, and I mean, it's like a sensory depth situation, you know, like a neuroscientist might say, oh, your brain is just creating these false images because there's not a lot of information because the light is low. But when it's happening to you, it's very psychedelic. It's very trippy. It's almost like when you see a rainbow, let's say, like in real life, the rainbow is there, but you know that it's not there at the same time. But it's physical. That's the only way I can describe like this kind of experience of transfiguration. And so I was in a class where they were trying to teach this, and they were passing around this red flashlight. And they get to this one woman's holding it. And at the time, I was just trying to make a very straightforward picture of this woman holding a flashlight. And everybody in the room was like, oh my gosh, I see a second face right next to your face. It's similar to yours, but different. Oh, maybe it's your grandmother. Oh, maybe it's your doppelganger. Maybe it's that voodoo priestess, Marie Laveau. And I did not see this second face. And so I was shooting film. I processed my film. I get my film back, and I have this picture of this woman holding the flashlight, but there's a second face right next to her face.
That's
like
crazy.
Just floating there. And it was, you know, it was a synchronicity, you know, I'm not like, I know the technical side of photography inside and out, and I had to make a long exposure in order to get the picture. So I understand that the technical explanation, you know, for the, you know, the standard technical explanation would be, oh, it's just movement. But it was so absolutely spot on, synchronistically uncanny, that it just felt so exciting and thrilling, and that I couldn't have made a better picture of that situation with my mind if I had tried. You know, it's kind of like the picture was gifted to me.
That's amazing.
So I started to try to make as many accidental things happen as possible, and I started to get these really crazy synchronicities. And the end of the book, it's actually how I end the book, is there was a medium I was photographing, and he was saying, a lot of times in spiritualism, they talk about these transfiguration masks. And he said, oh, if you photograph me, you'll see all different types of faces. So I took pictures. I took a lot of long exposures. He looks really different in all these pictures. And there was one picture where, it was it scared me, and I didn't want to show it to him because it looked like he had a mustache and glasses on. And I was like, I don't know how this happened, and I don't know how I did this, but I just really, this is freaking me out. But he saw the picture on my computer, and the medium said, oh, that picture, that's the picture. And so I just put it on a thumb drive and I gave it to him, and I didn't think anything of it. And then 9 months later, I was back in England, and he invited me to his house, and he said, I have to show you something. And he brought out this carte de visite of his great grandfather, and he put it next to my picture, and it was like identical.
Wow.
Whoa.
That's wild.
Yeah. And and I don't know. I am completely like, I love that there's multiple interpretations to these pictures, and that it's up to the viewer to decide. And like Gordon, the medium, says that's definitely my grandfather transfiguring, and other people say it's just an accident of the camera, and other people say I don't even see the resemblance, but like explain it away. But I love that it has all of there's some real mystery there for me, and that's what I ended up like searching for, not the answers, but to go deep into the mystery of it all.
Guys, real quick, I want to tell you about our good friends at Off the Grid Dream Life and their big event that is coming up. It's happening soon. So listen, have you ever had a vision of living in an off-the-grid Garden of Eden style sovereign community? Yeah, I think we all have here, right? Well, where you no longer depend upon the government and the matrix system to survive? Yeah, check that box. If so, now is the time to step into that dream life. The banks are technically insolvent. We know that. Swift has announced that they will be moving to CBDC platform in the next 12 to 24 months. Total household debt has reached $17 trillion. I don't think people even know what that number is, trillion, which is the highest on record. Cyber attacks are stepping up all over the world, just like that D-bag Klaus Schwab predicted. And we're on the verge of World War III and Civil War at the same time. Double bangers, okay? Do you have a plan? Well, guess what? If you'd like to live in a sovereign community with its own food, water, shelter, and energy, so you don't have to worry about any of that stuff, register now for the Off the Grid Dream Life event happening Saturday, May 25th at noon Central, online via Zoom from your own house, okay? Register now. The cost of your admission has already been covered for you. Just go. Dude, what? What are we talking about? Already covered for you.
Right.
Just it's crazy, dude. Just go to WWF. You don't even have to put that in. Just go to offgriddreamlife.com. That's offgriddreamlife.com to register now. When you attend, tell them Sam sent you. Tell them Sam sent you, okay? That's how we do. Again, the link to register for free is offgriddreamlife.com. Go secure a spot now to secure a sovereign future for you and your family. Thank you, offgriddreamlife.com, for sponsoring this show. Well, you're also going to find out that if you don't believe in this stuff, you won't see it.
Yeah.
It's just like you cannot see what you don't believe. If you don't think it's possible, you'll never see that it's possible.
Well, that's classically in the Bible too, like Jesus, that's his response to many people who come to him asking for works. He's like, even if I showed you, you wouldn't believe it.
You wouldn't believe it. And sometimes it takes a literally an act of God for people to believe in God.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's like, if you don't want to believe it, you're not going to believe it. So if you did show the photo of the face on top of the guy, and then you show a photo of his great grandfather, people are like, nope, don't see it. Okay, man. Like that, obviously, you're on a conspiracy podcast. It's called Tinfoil Hat. And it's like, that's kind of where I've gotten to just in conspiracies. It's like, I have zero desire to convince you of anything anymore. Like, if you don't get it after COVID, it's like, if you don't think people conspire after COVID, then I just can't help you.
Also, isn't it a better world with some mystery? You know,
that's why I think my new show Doom Scrolling does so well. Is because it's literally the conspiracy news. Here's your conspiracy news for the week. And people are like, oh, I love it because it's so much more interesting than watching a regular newscast by people that you've caught lying to you forever. But it gets into also like they're using sorcery to manifest this reality. Weapons of mass destruction are in Iraq. They tell us enough, we start to believe it. And then eventually there comes a point where like, well, you have to produce it, and it never happened. So now it's so hard for them to use that trick again, right?
They tried so hard to make it happen, too. I don't get why they just didn't fake it.
Why didn't they just bring in their own nukes? Yeah, because that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah.
But I love these stories. I love these stories of this spooky ass shit.
But speaking about belief, I can so about like the, you know, if you ever had a real one, you wouldn't believe it. Like there's a theorist that I'm really interested in. He was like a British psychologist named Kenneth Batchelor, and I kind of see it his way now, which is like consensus reality protects itself. So,
ooh, I like that.
If these things need to have a dual meaning. They have to look like a super fake, silly picture. If fraud like manifestations slip into reality more easily. Like his theory was the paranormal is just a rearrangement of normality. That's his definition of paranormal, and that it can only happen in like these semi-autonomous zones. And you can't mess with consensus reality too much. Consensus reality needs to win. And that even speaks to like what is reality? Is it what the consensus believes? Like, this whole creation of our stories that come together. And, in certain cultures, you have more magic because more people believe in it.
Yeah, I agree.
So it always has to look fake. It has to have the dual face. It has a hiding quality because reality protects itself. And also, if it looks silly, it alleviates your fear, which thus allows more of it. That's the Batchelor theory.
I love that.
Yeah, me too. It's almost like Inception or something.
I believe in all that stuff. Like, I believe in like what is home field advantage? If you think about it in sports, like what is home field advantage?
I think about that a lot.
It's like this is just a room full of everyone believing the same thing.
It's the energy,
and the energy affects the court.
Because it's a real thing. I mean, we know it because Vegas has put a number on it.
Isn't that pretty much what I believe? Egregores, is that what they're called? Yeah, I totally believe in that. Like, it's like I can't tell you how many people want me to have, discussions about whether this person really existed or that person didn't really exist. But in reality, in my belief is when enough people believe it, it becomes real. And I think it could go back in time and change the data.
Now that's going deep right there.
Well, I do because it's like when you get into like 9/11, right? There's so much art that depicts 9/11 early. So much art. And you can go, well, okay, that could be a revelation of the method. That's fine if they're involved in it, but there's people who have nothing to do with it that are just portraying this event that hasn't happened yet. Like the famous guy that died in the towers that had a famous statue of planes flying into him.
Yeah.
It just becomes this ripple effect of energy. But like, why does that have to be super negative? Why can't people believe enough things it becomes real? And even like our views of like past politicians. If enough of us believe that this guy, and this gets into what you talk about consensus reality, if enough people believe this person's a good person, right? Then they are a good person in history, right? So it's like Abraham Lincoln is a great example of that. Like there's a lot of people that will break down like the things that Abraham Lincoln did. Like we've had Ryan Dawson on who's talked about all the shady shit that Abraham Lincoln has done. But you look at the consensus on Abraham Lincoln was that he freed the slaves, wanted to get us out of wanted to get us out of that, and that's his reality now. Am I far off? Is this like some tangent that doesn't even make sense?
No. Yeah. I mean, the relationship between the true and the false, I think, is one of the most complicated aspects of our reality. Like, I mean, and there's different ways to look at it, but yeah, like in our world, fact becomes fiction and fiction becomes fact, like a wave.
Yes.
And so I don't know. I mean, I just been thinking about all of this stuff.
No, I love this. And you kind of just opened my eyes and my mind to like, there's no reality. There's only consensus. Right?
Yeah.
Like if we just all agree on it, it's reality, even though in reality, that might not how it went. That might not be how it went.
Well, yeah. And I mean, also with the creation of reality, but there's a bedrock, but our consensus is absolutely shaping it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there is okay, if we go 9/11, right? The bedrock is that there was an attack. That's the bedrock, right? And everyone, no matter where you are on the spectrum of that, well, I mean, human vibration might be the outlier on that, but the reality is that 99% of the people believe something happened that day, right? That will be the bedrock. There was an event that day, right? Would that be the bedrock? And then the consensus becomes guys who from the Middle East did that. But in reality, we might dig deeper and find out there's a lot more going on to that.
Yeah. I mean, I also think we forget, like we're always trying to make things literal, but there's like mythic reality too. And so I'm really like, I don't know it's just a complicated thing. Like what is myth and what is fact? Like, meaning like, it's hard to describe, but maybe I could use like Donald Trump as an example, right? So, like I think Donald Trump's like mythic image changed that day he like descended the staircase. And that when he descended that staircase, he somehow became representative of like the glossy sheen of the American dream. Like he's like gold and real estate and this version of America, and the con man is an American archetype, right? And so he like turned into this vision of the American dream as a man. And because the emotional response to him seems to be based on how you feel about those ideas of America. If you're looking at the shadow of America, or you're looking at the glossy sheen of America.
Yes.
And even with him and Hillary, there was like a mom-dad archetype thing going on.
Yeah, that's totally true. How you looked at them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I feel like a lot of people, if they hated their mom, they hated Hillary. And if they hated their dad, they hated Trump.
I'm with you on that. It's very, Hillary has, I was doing a joke about how I don't know if you've seen this on YouTube, but there's all these man on the streets where like good looking black guys are asking drunk white chicks for their body counts, and like women are just giving out their numbers. And I always found it hilarious because the only video I really want to see the body count for is Hillary Clinton. That'd be great. But but you're completely right. And it goes back to what we're talking, like this whole, like there is a 9D chest of with Trump of like, all of these trials are purposely meant to fail. Right? Like, because there is that belief that there's like, you hear people talk about like all these prophecies of like a dictator, and like what a great way to get everybody behind Trump is to constantly make him seem like the system is out the. I mean,
well, yeah, you can. I mean, it almost seemed the other day like he wanted to be arrested. I mean, put in jail. When
well,
he was
because
talking
every
back to
time
the
he has a
judge-
trial, it gets bigger in popularity. So you
yeah.
would go, why are you doing this? Unless it could be this 90D chest of like getting everybody, because you know it's like crazy because none of them are sticking and they're all failing, bro.
I think you're right.
You know, and like, but going back to the consensus is that dude, they're out to get him. He's up against it. He's an outsider, you know? But in reality, like, is this like done on, is this another psyop or another act of sorcery? Like, that's what I'm talking about. And we may not necessarily have the same views on politics. I don't know, but like for me, I don't trust any of them. Just so you know where I'm coming from.
I mean, it's almost impossible to say anything apolitical about Trump, but that's what I'm trying to say is that it taps into these mythic forces that are there. Like it's not just like mythology was for ancient Greece. Like we live by mythical archetypes. We're connected to a collective unconscious. Like.
I totally agree with that, 100%. And I think it's been going on forever and ever. And I think this even before, like, you know, there's so much going on, like the purposeful rewriting of our history. Why is that? That's to basically tell us his story, right? Which are these victors, bank. You know, if you go, Sam, whose story are we telling? We're telling these kind of the black nobility, the Bank of England, their story of they want us to think they discovered this place. And we've had people on before that tell us the timeline of America is much, much, much more different than they want us to believe. But they're all about co-opting the story. To me, that's what it's all about. It's like, no, dude, some guy who got lost went to India, discovered this amazing country. In reality, this country could have been been here for the longest time.
If you can't agree on the essential facts of reality, you know, then it's impossible to kind of build on, you know, to any progress.
Again, it gets into this whole thing about why should you care that the mermaid is black now? And it's like simply by itself, it means nothing. This fictitious character, it means nothing. But when you put it together, when we put it all together and we put it, you know, what Shannon's talking about, what other past people have come on, Dr. Narco Longo. When you put all that together, it's a rewriting of our history. So we cannot teach our grandchildren how, like, give them the knowledge they need to succeed. That's just my opinion. It's so simple on that. And I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong, Shan, but you know, that's what I think is when you get.
Yeah, I don't know. It's very complicated. I mean, there's like an author or a thinker that I really like. He's written books about daimonic reality, which is like the spirit world that, you know, there's the divine world, and then our world is like a shadow of that world. That would be like, you know, like Plato's cave type thing. But the connective tissue is this, like, you know, the spirit realm where the daimons live. That's where the UFOs are, and the ghosts and the dead and the fairies.
Daimon, it's called?
Daimonic reality. DAEMONIC. Daimonic reality is one of his books. And so that, you know, this daimonic reality, it can be physical but non-physical. You know, it's kind of like a lot of the UFO theories that they're not, you know, they're shapeshifters, they're interdimensional, they're not like nut and bolt crafts. Like that's kind of, you know, that would be like a daimonic theory about UFOs.
I love that. I love it. And what was the guy's name?
Patrick Harper.
Yeah,
he's really incredible.
Yeah.
But
I'm in on all that.
He's proposed that some conspiracy theories are more like the hollow earth theory, for example. He's talked about this. He's been on a few episodes of Higher Side Chats. It's actually like they're great episodes, where he's kind of saying that he views the hollow earth thing as like making the underworld of mythology real, you know? like trying to find like an actual like underground that's actually physically real is actually really like an effort to make the mythic underworld, that the underworld of mythology.
I find that dude, that I never even thought about that. Like where they're trying to make like,
Do you mean like Hades? Like that?
yeah, they're trying to make it real,
Huh. That's fascinating.
right? I mean, it's
A
kind
little
of crazy.
disturbing, but yeah.
It's kind of crazy. So I want to get into a couple things because I mean I've been I've been just keep asking all these crazy questions. Do you have any other great spooky stories? Because I was loving that stuff. Anything that we didn't get into before we move into the next topic I wanted to talk to you about? But any other great spooky stories? If not, no big deal. But I would love to hear.
I have one
anything
question in that realm too before you move on. So
Okay, or you can ask it. It's up to you.
well, let's see what she's got first.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of spooky stories in the book. I'm just thinking of one. This is a good spooky story that I haven't really told very often. So I was at this medium's house in England, and her and her husband are both mediums, and they turned their whole living room into this seance space. And I spent a lot of time there photographing them both. And they do art, and they did all this trance stuff, and they have this medium's cabinet in their house. And so Sylvia, the medium, says to me, I never sit in the dark because every time so she means like she always uses like a red light or a low blue light or something. She goes, because every time I sit in the dark, the next day something weird happens in the kitchen.
What?
And I was like, oh. And she goes, but you know what? Tonight I'm going to sit in the dark. So we did this sitting at her house, and she turned off all the lights, and she did her trance session in the dark. And I think we were using infrared. So I was shooting with my infrared camera. So, it was dark. It was completely dark. There was no light you could see with your eyes. And as soon as she went into her trance, it sounded like there was like a drum playing in the hallway, and we were the only ones there. And there was just like, it was very, very spooky. And she did her trance, and I could have sworn it was like as if somebody was outside the door playing a drum. And then I was just really like, I didn't know what to make of it. And so then the next day I was in the kitchen, and I went to make a cup of tea, and I grabbed her cupboard, and she had these old cupboards with ceramic knobs, like baked ceramic knobs. And I went and I touched the ceramic knob to open the cupboard, and it exploded in my hand. Ooh. And half of it shot up, and I looked, and it had cut my finger open. And I was bleeding. And then her husband goes, I screamed, and her husband goes, oh my God, what just happened? And he put his hand right near mine, and all of a sudden he was bleeding too. It was very bizarre. And she's like, oh yeah, I don't know, weird energy in the kitchen every time I sit in the dark. And I don't know what to say. That other than it happened.
I'm just telling you, man, I believe in all that stuff. Like my house that I moved into, like shit just goes missing, and it makes no sense at all.
Oh, I have a story about that too.
I mean, it just goes like it's almost like I have a tweaker goes to my house that just jacks electronics and sells it for like spiritual tweak or something like that, because things will just disappear, and you're like, that never leaves here.
My favorite part about that is probably there's some guy in a pawn shop with just a stack of shit that he has no idea, like, where is this coming from?
Yeah. It's crazy, dude. Well, what is your story?
Well, if that happens with, it's a story about like, there's a few pictures in the book about like objects that move. And, so I guess the flex is to ask for it back and see if they give it back to you.
Really?
Yeah, because so this is this is a true story. This isn't in the book, but I was at a place. It's like a college for spiritualists. It's called Arthur Findlay College, and it's sort of like a Hogwarts for adult spiritualists. It's outside of London. It's an amazing place. It's like this. It really is. It's like this big estate, and you go and stay there and take mediumship classes. And every time I go there, I have this something weird happens with objects. But the first time it ever happened, I was sharing a room with my friend, and I had a Sharpie marker, and I was marking my film canisters because I was shooting film at the time. So I was putting, my processing notes on the canister, and I was getting ready to go downstairs, and I looked and I had just had my Sharpie there and I turned and it was gone. And I said to my friend, "Did you just take my Sharpie?" And she said, "No, why would I do that?" And she was across the room, like she would have had to like traverse a bed to get to where it was anyway. And I was like, "Well, it was just here and now it's not. Like, did you do that?" And she said, "No." And then she says, "Well, just ask for it back." And I just was like, that is the most absurd thing I've ever heard. And she's like, "Well, it works." And so I just like rolled my eyes and I looked up and I said, "Oh, can I have it back?" And I turned my head and it was sticking straight out of my camera bag, like very playfully placed, like as if it was like just sticking out of the pocket of my camera
That's
bag.
wild, man.
I believe in that.
It was really,
Unreal.
I mean, and there was no way for her to have gotten to where I was because there was a bed in between us. Like, so yeah, I mean, things like that.
So Johnny doesn't believe this story, but when I was a kid, we had this magic hat. And my babysitter doesn't remember this, but we used to take these things and we'd take this hat, we put stuff, we'd like take a little truck, right? Like a Hot Wheels. We put it under the hat. We go like, we were like, blah, blah, blah. What, I forget what we'd say. We'd lift up the hat. It was gone. It was gone. And I'm telling you, man, we used to hear weird shit, man. I'm upstate New York. We used to hear weird shit in my house, man. Weird knocks on the window one night. It was very weird. Very weird. I believe in all that stuff. I'm going to ask for stuff back. I'm going to ask
That's the
for
move,
stuff
right?
back.
Yeah.
I never asked for it back.
Ask for more than you
I never asked for it
lost.
back.
Ask for money. Why not? Can I ask now, have you, this is a trope in horror films, the idea of bringing something home, have you experienced anything like that where you felt you brought something home from one of these encounters that maybe you wished you had not?
No, I haven't. And I know of that. And that's why I stick to spiritualism, because spiritualism is really, I mean, the energy, first of all, they don't even view themselves as a cultist. They think it's like natural law, like all of this aspect of reality is very natural, and that the mindset you bring and intention is what you get back. And so there's no like magic where you're calling a spirit in and demanding it do things for you, or you're trying to play with reality. Like all of spiritualism is really just to prove that our world connects to the other world, and to bring forth healing and stuff. So I guess like, with the intention in mind of all the stuff I've experienced, it's always been like really more like grandmotherly loving, even though we're sitting in the dark under red lights. Like there's anything really intense, like, or ego intention based or low energy. That's what they would describe, like, you raise your vibration to bring the highest and the best, and you have your spirit guides. Basically, long story short is, the situations I've been in, I don't think have been attracting stuff like that. I do hear that about haunted houses, or if you have people with, intentions to play around with low energy, I think that's very possible.
Does that interest you? Have you ever been interested in photographing like haunted houses and those kinds of things?
I mean, I'm interested in haunted houses, but obviously not the dark stuff. Like I try to, like, now even more than ever, I'm much more picky about who I like to be around and their intentions, and like the way that they perceive the world, I think is incredibly important. I have met some spooky people who do magic, and it's not my vibe. Like not that everybody is spooky who does magic. I'm just saying I've met people who like do curses and stuff.
Yeah,
and
those people can kiss my ass. So I'm with you on that. So you're getting into these things. Let's talk about tricksters. Tell me about tricksters and how it relates to the paranormal.
So early on in my project, I was seeing a lot of ambiguity, like a lot of situations that were like, okay, I don't know what to make of this, or like a lot of, paradrama. Like that's a term I like to use, where it's like, people getting like just highly emotionally charged and doing things that didn't make sense. And I found this book called The Trickster and the Paranormal by a parapsychologist named George Hansen. And once I read it, it just something clicked, and I felt like I understood things in a way. And his proposal basically is that this liminal space, the space between opposites, like, you have between life and death, you have ghosts and mediums, and between heaven and earth, you have, UFOs, like, between man and animal, you have things like the vampire, all these mythical things in this liminal space is ruled by the archetype of the trickster. And that, the trickster is like this amoral force that doesn't always behave properly or plays tricks. And this whole idea of like the trickster archetype being like the main energy of all of this stuff made a lot of sense to me. I don't know if I'm describing it in a way that makes sense, but you get what
Yes. I love that.
So-
I find it just, I mean, tricksters have been throughout history.
Yeah. I mean, and that was my point about the Erie Canal and the eruption of this trickster, these trickster practices, because the trickster appears like, it's like a culture shifter, it's also like the fact that like the women's rights movement used the spirit world to flip the script on the social sanctions. That's totally trickster, the trickster, the message of the trickster is that no system is impenetrable. And the trickster has been described as like the juice or the life force, kind of like it has a destructive quality that breaks things up when they get too solid or too stiff. And, all of this stuff appears in like this liminal times, liminal space. You're more apt to have like UFO flaps, like stuff like that. Just thinking about it like that just really helped me navigate all of this.
So you're saying that the trickster does stuff to get us to think and get us somewhat uncomfortable?
Yeah, that's one aspect. Some have argued that it's like one of the oldest narrative devices. It's a really ancient psychic structure in myth, this trickster figure. And like some even have argued that it's the precursor to the savior is the trickster, like that trickster figure. Because like, Jesus, like imagination made flesh, he's all things in one. So that would be like the trickster would be a precursor to that type of thing.
Now, is the trickster literal, or is it just like a figurative thing?
I mean, it's like an energy, but in folktales, it's like the coyote or like the hare, like the animal that comes in and causes trouble, but renews the situation. Nobody's really, it's a hard thing to pin down and a hard thing to define, but I feel like it's deeply attached to like the creative force of the universe.
A little bit of agent of chaos brings in to like spice it up. When things are getting bland, it's like in improv, when the improv's not going anywhere, a guy just steps in and just changes the direction of everything. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, that makes sense to me, dude. You got to muck it up. You got to get it going. Got to change. Or
comedy, like when you make fun of something that's, you can speak to power through comedy. That's like very trickster.
Yeah, I 100. Well, yeah. I mean, I think trickster. I actually think a big part of censorship is to get rid of the trickster. Is to get rid of truth to power and illuminating of what is real. What is consensus? No, that's interesting. Maybe it's not consensus. Maybe the trickster's trying to get people to look at it a little different, and that's what comedians
the trickster's always trying to. The trickster's about bringing up energies that are repressed too, and I feel like if you repress the trickster too much, that's that's when you feel like there's devil energy, like there has to be this playful, like the trickster's about neglected stuff too. It's shadow stuff. He's like kind of always tossing the shadow up into the situation.
I find that all fucking interesting. I find that all interesting. So, I want to get into you. So, you wanted to ask me some stuff about the Comedy Store.
Yeah.
What would you like to know? Because I got answers.
Is it haunted?
Yes.
Okay, so this I kind of think of the Comedy Store as like this shaman's den of like all these like liminal figures and these really like crazy personalities coming together. So it makes total sense that it would be haunted.
Well, I mean, from its earliest days, it's always had just crazy energy. If you study Ciro's, it was an old mob hangout.
Yeah.
And there's stories about what the belly room used to be, an abortion clinic. There's so much, like, it has such texture to its history. And it's like the fact that it became a comedy club. And it's just like, not only has it become a comedy club, but it's like a comedy club that has been like the center, considered the mecca of comedy. And like, which is really crazy because for the longest time, New York has always been like the center, like what everyone thought was where real comedians went. But LA's counter to New York City was always, up until recently, the Comedy Store. And it used to be like it used to have a real vibe of like, if you were able to get into the Comedy Store, you were able to work your craft like never before, that you would go out and become. Comedy Store comedians were at one point were considered the greatest comics out there. It was like that and what they call the Comedy Cellar in New York. But, you know, the comedy, like, it was very hard to come out here and bang at because the Comedy Store, it's such the way Mitzi ran it, and she had psychic ability. She had really psychic abilities. I got picked up at the Comedy Store because I was a part of what she called the Arabian Nights, so that would later go on to be called the Axis of Evil Comedy Tour. But the reason I bring that up is a year before 9/11, she was like, the Arab people are going to need somebody a voice for them in comedy. She literally said that's
crazy, dude.
That's why she put together the Arabian Nights, because she felt they were going to need a voice.
That's strange.
A year before.
No shit.
Oh,
good thing she got an Armenian in there to
well,
help the Arabians feel better.
That was the whole story.
I know.
How I got in there. They worked me in under tricksters. Okay, but
tell her your ghost story, dude.
So, I mean, there's been stories like, you know, Jeff Scott, who's no longer with us. He was the gay pianist, and he passed during COVID.
Oh,
but
what a sweet guy.
What a sweet guy, and what a character that guy was. And he 100% was into the paranormal of the Comedy Store. And so my own story is I have seen 2 times at the Comedy Store that, to me, were haunted. And the first one is, and people on the show might have heard of this before. I definitely talked about it on Broken Sin, but the first time was when early into the Comedy Store, into my state, the Comedy Store was what they called the dark period. And that was when it wasn't packed all the time. Like it's been like for its early years and its later years. It was Mitzi still was running it, but she was very lucid in reality. So that, like, it was this time where like the inmates were running the asylum. But the comics that came out of there are the who's who of comedy right now. Right? Joe Rogan, Joey Diaz, Bobby Lee, Andrew Santino, like all these like Netflix guys all came out of the Comedy Store during its dark period. It was called its dark period because there weren't big crowds there. But the comedy was the purest it was ever be, because you could go there and bomb in dignity, which was, we'll never have that again, ever. There will never be a time where there will be
now there's a whole show dedicated to you bombing and being humiliated. I mean, that's what Kill Tony is.
Well, in a weird way that is, but the show is definitely...
No, we love the show. We love Kill Tony.
But the club was in this amazing time. So we used to do stand and when I got picked up at the Comedy Store, it was one main room show the whole week. Now it's
One
every
show,
night.
wow, that's
One room show in the main room. That's how slow it was. Because Mitzi wouldn't work with the industry, so they were blackballing basically the club. The industry Mitzi wouldn't kiss their ass, so they didn't want to show up. So I was blessed. What they called the Brody Stevens spot was actually the SamTripoli spot for more time than Brody did it. God rest his soul. But so I was going up late at the store, and so the Comedy Store was Ciro's back in the day. I don't know if you know this history, but it was called Ciro's. It was an old mob club, and there was a place where they told you where you would see where they would shoot you. You'd be called upstairs, and they would shoot you as you walk up the stairs.
Wow.
There was basically assassinations and murders done in this place.
Wow.
So there's a big green room, and in the green room, there's a shower because they would have flappers and dancers going on there so they could shower. So I'm in the green room and it's dead. Like the green room is dead. It's just me in the back getting ready for my set. And
It's a creepy room already. I mean, there's energy in that place just at the default, night. Like,
yeah,
I mean,
100%. And so I'm sitting down there, and I'm sitting in the room where the women would get ready, and it's like this weird like makeup room where it's like this table like
with the lights and yeah.
mirrors all along the wall, desk, whatever we call that, shelf, whatever.
Like a counter, yeah.
A counter. And I'm sitting on one of the stools at the counter with the lights by myself. The shower is behind me, and suddenly I hear the shower knob turn and the water start all by itself. All by itself.
Crazy.
And I was like, what the fuck? And I just ran out, dude. I didn't even turn it off. I just ran out. So that was the first time I knew something was up. I have friends of mine that have seen chairs thrown. Nobody's there. A chair get thrown across the main room. Freddie Lockhart's seen this.
You saw some kind of like dark thing too.
So
like
the next time is the Comedy Store's dead again. In the main room, which is the big room, which is now jumping every night. There, Jeffrey Ross and all of his roast writers, which was Sarah Tiana, Tony Hinchcliffe, and a couple other people. I think Ben Giafalo was there. They're in the room, in this giant room all by themselves. I walk in, I say hi to them. I'm doing naughty shows there at the time, which was my like adult comedy burlesque show, that multimedia burlesque show. And we really weren't like, I mean, you would put it, advertising on the internet wasn't as big as it is now. It just wasn't. It was just starting to become a thing. I'm putting up flyers on the wall. I go to put up this giant poster of the Naughty Show. I realize that I can't put a thumbtack in. I have to tape it, and there's no tape around. So I walk back through. I drive down to the Rite Aid, grab tape, come back. It's maybe 10 minutes, right? I come back. I go into the main room, and there is Jeffrey Ross and all of his writers still there. I go, and before when I was in the lobby, it was bright light. It was a bright, well-lit lobby. I now go back to the main room, and now the main room is dark. And I go out in the back, I go, did you guys turn off did anyone come through here? They go, no. Did any of you guys turn the light off in the lobby? They go, no. I go, then why is the lobby dark? There's no light in the lobby. I walk in, now suddenly there's this like white light. I mean, this bright white light. And it's just a strip. It had to be about that wide. And I'm trying to figure out where the light source is from. Because all the lights are off, and the only light that is making it is the glass doors down the hall. You went down those stairs, down the hall from the street on Sunset.
Too far away.
Which would mean the light would have to go bing, 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 and off the glass window, off the pictures, and then somehow hit it right, but hit it in a way that's so intense white. I don't know where it's coming from. So I'm staring at it. I go, where the fuck is this light coming from? And I'm staring, and then suddenly just a black figure just passes right in front of that white light. And I go, fuck this. And I ran out. And that was the last, yeah.
There are people too with stories about like chairs being stacked up. You know, they come back and a bunch of chairs are stacked up high. I've heard stories about people being pulled like by the legs. Someone was sitting on the stage, I think, and got like pulled by the legs off the stage.
Yeah.
So much weird shit.
Yeah.
I never saw anything.
I do.
All that time in the basement doing those podcasts.
I've been
and we never
surrounded.
saw
I've always seen psychic shit. Always. I have memories from outside my body. I have memories.
What's that?
I told you this before, where it's like I have a distinct memory of me outside my body walking into my childhood living room.
Right.
And I just stand there and then memory stops. But that's how I remember the memory. I do not remember me as looking in, but me from the outside seeing me walk in. Yeah, dude, it's haunted. The Comedy Store is haunted. But here's what I believe.
Okay.
I believe the more you get more people around, and in particular more electricity going, the less you see that stuff. That's
Yeah.
my opinion. So now that it's always jumping, people have their phones everywhere, they're reworking the wiring, you see less of it, it's less obvious.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It's just weirder. But back in the day when it was dead and all the comics were hanging out, they were either working the door or hanging out, they'd see paranormal all the time. You've had people come in with cameras, seeing orbs everywhere. Before Johnny was on the show, Abby Martin came down to the Comedy Store basement, and we're interviewing. People say they could see orbs floating around her.
No kidding.
It's crazy, dude. It's nuts.
Wow.
Yeah. So you should come out sometime, and when you're there, like, just look around, man. I'll let you do a tour of it, man.
Yeah, no, I'd love to.
They won't let me stay overnight there.
You asked?
Yeah, I've asked
For
several
that reason,
times.
for like haunting stuff?
Yeah. We were just gonna we're like, let's do it, dude. Let's all stay over. And of course, it was Crazy Ryan and his dark energy. Off the grid. If you again, we talk about it all the time. If you study the show when it first started, as soon as Ryan comes on, it gets very dark. It gets very dark, and then it gets, it starts to change. And so, tell us as we wrap it up here. Tell us about your event coming up.
Oh, yeah. So every summer, end of July, I host a symposium at Lilydale, and I tried to bring together artists and practitioners and people who study the paranormal and people who've written about it and people who've had experiences. And so it's like this big, 2.5 day weekend. And I have like a lot. I'm going to be doing a talk. I have like the world expert of spontaneous human combustion doing a talk. I have.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, his name is Larry Arnold. He's really amazing. He's been researching spontaneous human combustion like for, I don't know, like decades now. So he is really the go-to guy. And he crafted a special presentation for speaking to like the spiritual meaning of spontaneous human combustion. So I can't wait for that. We're going to be talking about like magical Cornwall. My friend just wrote a book about Timothy Leary's ex-wife, Rosemary. I'm doing a presentation about my next book, which is I saved this crazy archive of seance photography from Missouri that was created. It was a group created by the American poet John Neihart, who wrote the book Black Elk Speaks. I don't know if you've ever heard of that book, but
No.
Basically, I saved this crazy, crazy archive of psychic photography, and I'm going to talk about that. And, there's a Jody Wiley, the filmmaker, is coming, and she's going to screen a really rare. She did a documentary about Unarians. The Unarian, they're LA. They're like a UFO group, and they used to have like a public access TV show, and she's going to screen one of their very rare films that the group made. Yeah, it's just why, I mean, there's like 15 million things going on, and it's all listed at my website. It's going to be, so if you ever wanted to come to Lilydale, I'm trying to give everybody this like amazing reason to come to
No, I
Lilydale.
love it. I love it. Now, your book, tell us a little bit about your book, because some of the pictures are amazing to the point where people will be like, oh, that's Photoshop. Like, the pictures are insane. Like, tell me like the process of your pictures and what makes it into the book, what doesn't make it into the book.
Oh yeah. Well, so the book, it's kind of a weird book because the first half is all this historical pictures and writing, kind of explaining some of the history that we talked about, because I kept finding that nobody knew about this history. So that's the third of the book, and then it's all my pictures. And yeah, they were taken over almost 20 years, and there's a lot of different type of pictures. There's journalistic pictures, like storytelling pictures about the places, and then there's, you know, documenting some of these weird objects or this weird history. And then there's my own paranormal experiments. There's even an experiment where I go to Loch Ness and try to photograph Loch Ness, and, you know, like some of my spooky seance pictures that I mentioned. And there's this one of the most famous pictures I've taken of this guy who seemed to make his hand grow gigantic, and I got a picture of it. Yeah, so there's like, I think there's like 150 of my original pictures. And then at the end, the last third of the book, there's like an index. So there'll be like a thumbnail of the picture, and then I tell the stories behind the pictures. So there's a lot of my spooky stories, and a lot of the history and the funny stories are then in the back of the book. So it's kind of a complicated book, but I think it all works together.
Can I ask you briefly about one photograph where it appears a hand is emerging from a guy's mouth in this long kind of sloping?
Yes,
Yeah, what
yes.
is that?
What's going on there? What was he
What
doing?
is that?
So we didn't even talk about ectoplasm.
Come on, talk about ectoplasm.
It's not too late.
We'll talk about ectoplasm.
So yeah, I mean, you probably heard of ectoplasm from Ghostbusters,
Yeah, of
right?
course, yeah.
Is that, yeah.
I've
yeah,
been
so,
slimed.
So Dan Aykroyd is his family are spiritualists.
Yeah.
And so that's where he gets that term from. And actually that in Ghostbusters, that's where I first heard the term of ectoplasm. But I found out that ectoplasm is it's like this mythical substance that spiritualists believe can merge the realms of life and death. It's like a spiritual kind of substance that can come out of the medium and then take form and take shape. And it's got a really wild history, because the term ectoplasm was actually invented by a Nobel laureate in medicine named Charles Richet. And there was a lot of, I mean, we didn't talk about this, but a lot of like the really famous scientists from the 19th century were totally into seances. They were all going to seances and doing experiments there and studying mediums. And so in the late 19th century, they started reporting seeing this ectoplasm. And then what ended up happening is a lot of people got caught faking ectoplasm, and then it got kind of called a magic show. So a lot of spiritualists, they just stopped doing those types of seances, right? Like, so a lot of times what you'll see is just like what you see on like shows like the Long Island Medium. It's just, you know, people talking in a light room. There's no dark seance stuff. Yeah. But I became really obsessed with this idea of ectoplasm, and I traveled all over to see if I could find it. And so that picture that you cited is a German medium named Kai Mugi, who goes and travels and does these ectoplasmic seances.
But is that just in camera, or did you see?
No, it was objectively there. You know,
Wow.
A lot of people, he's very controversial. People accuse him of, you know, being a stage magician. But he travels the world as like a genuine ectoplasmic medium. And so when I first photographed him, it was just really surreal, because I felt like I was watching those vintage pictures from the 1900s, like jump to life right before my eyes. Wow. It was very.
Could you give his name again? I'm sorry.
Kai Mugi.
Okay, thank you.
Mugi. I'm terrible at pronouncing German, but it's Muegge. He's really controversial. A lot of people in spiritualism absolutely can't stand him.
Mirga, probably.
And yeah, so he's doing these very controversial ectoplasmic seances that are really, remnants from the late 1800s.
So I see a picture in your book, and we'll let you go after this, but medium Mary Manhall, and she's got some weird stuff coming out of her nose, and there's faces in that. What is that?
Oh, that's a vintage picture from Canada. Oh yeah, so so there's a lot of vintage pictures because a lot of my pictures kind of reference this really wild, absurd visual history of spiritualism. So that picture that you cited, it's from a collection from the 30s from Winnipeg, Canada. And it's again, it was a medical doctor and his nurse wife who made all these pictures of ectoplasm and swear that they're 100% genuine. And there's some of the strangest images I've ever seen. And I became like so totally fascinated with this visual history. So I started becoming really a researcher. I did a lot of, photo research for this book. And I was able to publish a lot of vintage pictures in the book alongside mine.
So in this picture, is that ectoplasm coming out of Mary? Is that what you
Yes, yes. And that whole archive it's amazing. I was just there. I did a residency, a short little trip at that archive. It's absolutely fascinating. They have everything digitized online, the University of Manitoba, Winnipeg. And they have all the notes and everything. So if you wanted it, you could do a full investigation into all that material just online. It's one of the best kind of examples of this kind of archive that is access to the public. It's very strange history. The filmmaker Guy Madden, he made a film called My Winnipeg, and it's kind of referenced in that. It's the reason people think of Winnipeg as like a weird city is because of those pictures.
Dude, it's such a weird picture. I'm trying to get to Johnny. It won't let me upload it, Johnny. I don't know why.
We'll do it.
Hold on. I'll just
it's
hold
totally
on.
bizarre. Isn't it like shockingly bizarre?
It is, and the reason it's so bizarre is because you're telling me this is from. Here we go, Johnny. I'm gonna send that to you. You're telling me it's from the 1930s, and I don't know how they could Photoshop that in the 1930s.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think that's Photoshop.
But that's what critics are gonna say. Oh, that's just Photoshopped. Do you get it?
Oh, yeah, or
I'm
it was
trying to get
hit.
it over
Or it's from a magic trick or stuff. But that story is really kind of wild. I mean, that's what I love. These stories are so absurd, but there's real, true mystery embedded in them too. This history.
Look at that, Johnny. She's saying that's a picture from the 1930s. Look at that picture right there.
Yeah.
It's so weird. You're like, oh, if it was today, you'd be like, that's Photoshopped. But in reality, look at that, dude. That's a clear ass face right there. How would they do that?
Yeah, it looks like Teddy Roosevelt.
Well, I mean, a lot of them were accused of like swallowing and like vomiting up these creations, or like you have to go through the notes because they go through all these, like a lot of the mediums were strip searched and there's these really intense processes. And yes, it's completely absurd and looks totally insane. I just am like, the more I dug into the history, the more interesting it was actually. And the images are just shockingly wild. I mean, they were the strangest kind of most uniquely disturbing pictures I had ever found. And I was so shocked that they existed because I did not know that until I started photographing mediums.
Look at that. That's so crazy. That's just a crazy ass picture to me. What a great episode this is. Thank you, Shannon. One more time. Can you tell us tell our listeners where they can find you?
You can find me at shannontaggart.com, Taggart. I have my events listed there. There's links for my book. And I also have a mailing list that alerts, subscribers to things that I'm doing.
Well, I'm a big fan. I appreciate you. If I get it back to upstate New York, I would love to figure out how to hook up and check out all your stuff. And I'll check out when your event is. I'd love to come out and check it out. You sent me the book. I need to sit down and look at it. I'd really like to take my daughter and have her look through it too and just check that out because I think she would love the pictures.
Awesome. Well, thank you. It was great.
Shannon, thanks for coming on. We appreciate
thank you. I had a great time. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, enjoy. Let's break it down. Johnny, what'd you think?
I love that kind of stuff, man. This is what I'm here for. The
I'm all about that.
Yeah, me
People
too.
get mad that we're getting too that I'm getting too religious for them. I'm open minded to all of it. I mean, like I want to be.
You can't win, man.
Well, I love everybody, and it makes me sad that some people might not be like into it anymore because I'm on a spiritual journey.
But then you have the other people who are like, dude, you're not spiritual enough. You're talking about the esoteric. You're
yeah, I
burn.
know. I mean, we're just
you're gonna burn.
Yeah, it's everybody. I will always be. It's more complicated than anyone believes.
So it's one of the. It's a blessing to have a large audience, but when you have a large audience, they have diverse opinions.
They have diverse opinions, dude. They have diverse opinions. But we loved it. Shannon was great. I believe in all that stuff, and I do believe that this is a big part of, there's so much that gets into why they want us to live in the big city. I think it is Babel. And part of it is once we get around enough electricity and all that stuff, we don't get to see the crazy shit.
Well, we must be totally fucked in here with all this electronics shit. I mean, we're done.
Johnny,
we're toast, man.
I tell people this all the time. I know we don't work hard labor. I know we're not roofing. I know we're not doing any of that stuff. But we're around electricity all the time. It's not good for us.
I'm sure we'll
It's
pay.
not. Oh, we're going to totally pay for it. I'm already like, what is your name again?
Oh, no.
What is your name? Tell me, young man. What is your name? It's Johnny Woodard. Oh, do I know you? Yeah.
Dude, I can feel the decline. Like I was never smarter than like 17, 16, something like that.
Yeah,
Like I was the smartest ever then, and then it's been a down. I've gotten wiser but dumber, and you know what I mean. My intelligence is
Johnny, I will 100% tell you this. This is what I believe. They are saturating us in useless knowledge, and you're just filling up your hard drive with wasted shit.
Yeah.
And that's why I honestly don't believe that everybody is that we're getting dumber. We just have useless knowledge.
I'm getting dumber. I know I am. I got.
Okay,
I'm waiting for the hard
you.
drive upgrade from Elon. That's what I know.
Oh, Johnny, you just can't wait.
Did you see that the first one malfunctioned already? The first implant, it's already malfunctioned in the guy.
Oh, and what's the guy doing? Just
I don't
sucking
know.
off everybody? Just dude, Elon,
like,
having
listen,
problems.
listen,
He's
buddy.
just sucking off everybody. He can't stop sucking on weirdness.
Listen,
dude.
buddy, we know that you're paralyzed and you would love to interact with this computer. There is a 20% chance it's going to turn you into a flaming homosexual.
Yeah, well, 100%. You're just gonna be just gawking everywhere. I'll take the chance. I'll take the freaking chance.
It's a good deal until you're in the 20%.
Until you're just like, oh my God, how many guys today? Please stop. Please, for the love of God, stop. Yeah, I thought it was great, dude. I'm very interested in all that stuff. I'm interested. I think it's interesting.
It's disturbing.
I'm very interested in stuff I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Way to go
profound.
on a nice.
Those images disturb me a little bit though. They're unnerving. Like they're like, ooh, that's. She says that they're all positive and light, but they look kind of creepy to me.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah.
I felt like weird vibes off of those images.
100%. I think you're right. I think they're all weird vibes. But that's that's the world. That's the world of the
loved her
paranormal, dude.
Her voice was great. She reminded me of Catherine O'Hara, from Home Alone and SCTV and all that.
She reminds you of the mom that left the kid
Her
behind?
voice is very similar, yeah. Because
Very rude,
no, she's from upstate New York, and Catherine O'Hara's from Canada, so I think that.
You think it's the same shit?
Yeah, same accent, similar. Kevin.
Dude, Meta World Peace is a grandpa at 44 years old. Oh,
Well, that surprises me zero.
yeah. But possession, all that stuff, mediums, energy.
I don't mess
Johnny,
with-
I
I
think the
don't
world's
mess
a
with
lot
that.
more interesting. I got,
I don't
Jesus in
mess
my
with
heart.
that.
What?
I don't mess with that shit.
Johnny, you really don't. But you do want to go.
You mess with possession? I don't mess with
No,
possession.
but Johnny, you want to go to North Carolina, look at orbs.
Yeah, well, I think that might be a different class. Plus, I trust the blood cells.
I do trust the blood cells. Guys, go to SamTripoli.com. Check out everything. New stuff going on. I'm going to, again, check out my, go to events. La Jolla this weekend. La Jolla this weekend. And then Morris Plains. And I had a couple weeks off in June. I think I'm going to enjoy it.
Nice, man. Good for you. You
Yeah.
deserve it.
I do. Yeah,
You
I do
work too
deserve
damn
it,
much,
Johnny.
man.
I do deserve it. I do deserve it.
Take care of yourself.
I do. I'm gonna. But go to SamTripoli.com. All the videos. All the so doom scroll. I'm gonna tell you something. I've decided I'm not gonna list the videos and who created the videos on YouTube because they shadow ban me for that. They shadow ban me. I'm still almost up to 20,000 views.
They shadow ban you for giving credit to people?
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Can you believe that?
They must think you're like spamming links or something.
No, yeah. So what I have to do now is tell everybody if you want to find out who you want to find out all the content creators, you either gotta go to SamTripoli.com or you gotta go to Rumble or even Twitter doesn't like you doing that now.
Yeah, I've noticed that. Yeah, Twitter is weird about certain words and stuff too. Like if you
It's starting to get back to what it was. But go to SamTripoli.com. You got all the dates, you got all the events, you got all the t-shirts. Keep going down. New episode of Chaos Twins supposed to come out, and
Oh really?
yeah, I'm talking to them about it. All my premium content, I'm gonna be changing that fucking. Look how tiny that premium content is. I'm putting new content.
Well, it is the secret dojo, so we
That's
can't-
so true. It needs to be like
It's like the tiniest button ever.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to even
I don't
notice
even
that?
know why it's that fucking small. Anyways, premium content. I'm putting up all my content on Timfo on SamTripoli.com, but you can still go to Rockfin. I'm bringing back Zero. I'm going to start doing Zero again. I think it's more important than ever. Conspiracy Social Club, tinfoil hat, Cash Daddy's on fire.
Yeah.
Grabbing shirts. I got to get all my shirts, my new shirts made. Cameos are great. Buy gold and silver. Buy gold and silver, everybody. Like we said earlier, go to SamTripoli.gold, use the promo code tinfoil, and get into the wolf pack. Buy your precious metals now. Rife Technologies, he wants to come back on, explain the whole thing. But hey, if you get it, you get it. AquaCure Hydrogen Brown Gas, use the promo code tinfoil hat. Our good friends at Harley Ray, promo code SWARM15. Your candles, your sage, your crystals, your name it, they got it for you. Just go there, use SWARM15, everything and anything you need. Of course, I had it today before my jiu-jitsu class. Energy, I take chemical-free body, energize your health. Bang, bang, pow. Use the promo code tinfoil hat at Chemical Free Body. I use their supplements every day. And then a dude, Joel Staley, like, you doing 24s? I'm like, yeah, dude. I'm doing 20s.
It's close enough.
I'm doing 20. I haven't had the best week. I've been doing a little munch. But I'm gonna get back on it tonight. You trust me, Johnny. Don't you worry
I
about
have
it.
faith in you.
You do, Johnny. Thank you.
do.
But just go to Joel Staley, use the promo code tinfoil, click the banner and rock and roll.
Can I just say that's an important thing, is to be able to have faith that you'll follow through on your promises to yourself. And I think what you do with him, that's why that's important, is because, when you say, I'm going to do something tonight, it's important that you keep a promise to yourself. That's like one of the most important things, is to have some discipline, internal discipline, even when nobody else is involved. So I'm a big fan of what you're doing with that guy.
Thank you, dude.
Yeah,
Thank you so
beautiful, Sam.
much.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a hard thing, but it's beautiful.
You got the telegrams, you got the socials, go down, and then you got all the podcasts, all the videos, everything right there for you. Holla at your boy. There we go. Anything else, Johnny?
Please follow me on Twitter at Johnny Woodard, and we just dropped a really great episode of Broken Sam. Got up in the 160s in the comedy rankings for the first time since the show came out. I think that we were that high. Broken Sam doing
Dude,
really well.
look how good we're doing. Bring it. Ba, 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 ba. All right, guys, enjoy these highlights.
Here's a clip from the latest Broken Sim.
I want to talk about Kevin Spacey because he's all over social media.
Okay, I will only continue if you agree to keep that in.
I will keep most of that in.
Okay, well, keep it in, Johnny.
Kevin Spacey's all over social. Have you seen this?
No.
He's everywhere. And celebrities are coming out to bat for this guy like I've never seen. You got Sharon Stone out here right now saying, I can't wait to see Kevin back at work. He's a genius. He's so elegant and fun, generous to a fault, and knows more about our craft than most of us ever will. And then you have Liam Neeson coming out today.
Of course.
And his words are, Kevin is a good man and a man of character. He's sensitive, articulate, and non-judgmental, with a terrific sense of humor. He is also one of the finest artists in theater and on camera.
Dude,
personally speaking, our industry needs him and misses him greatly. He's doing the rounds on TV. He did a big TV interview over with the BBC.
Yeah.
What is happening right now?
Yeah, dude, you remember that whole like weird thing he did where he's like basically people thought he was putting out messages to everybody?
Every Christmas he does a weird video. He went on Tucker. Like, here's my favorite, by the way. Kevin Spacey just tweeted, longtime watcher, first-time guest. It's an honor to join you on the other side of woke, Chris. And he's going on
I
Chris
love that
Cuomo's
he's like,
show.
dude, I got canceled for raping people.
Allegedly.
I
should say
beep
he
that?
actually won the civil case, like against Anthony Rapp, the actor who accused him. He got sued, won that suit, and then countersued him civilly and won in civil court. So.
Oh, that's got to be the worst.
Well, here's my thing. Do you know how bad you have to be to get Me Too'd by men?
Well, dude, I
You know what I mean?
literally was going to do that joke last
Like-
night when I was talking about
Think about that.
Zach,
It's bad.
the fat jackass guy that was on the show.
Yeah.
I was doing a joke because I thought it was gay forever.
Yeah.
And then he did his podcast. He's like, I'm not. He's like, I'm not gay. I'm like, are you sure?
He does a joke about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I go, I think you're pretty gay. He goes, I'm not gay. And then I did a joke about how the only reason I found out he's not gay, and I'm pissed because the only reason I put him in the show was to make him, so he'd suck my dick. And the crowd gets quiet, and then I realized I should have tagged that. Which is like, ooh, what? Am I going to get Me Too? Guys don't Me Too other guys. We know how to keep a secret, right?
Right.
And
Think
that's
about it. Kevin Spacey, how bad do you have to be to get Me Too'd by guys? That's really my point.
Yeah, I agree.
And this guy I think they're going to let him back in, dude. I really do.
Well,
I think it's about to happen.
Well, isn't it crazy? Because, you could say the same thing about Jeffrey Ross, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many people going, how's this happening? And it is. And you have the other guys who got excommunicated. They can't even go in comedy clubs, let alone host this cultural event on Netflix.
And he's everywhere, dude.
And I go, here's what I've learned, dude. If you get accused by a bunch of people and nothing happens, that's a sure sign something happened to me. That's my opinion.
Oh, really? You think so?
Well, dude, the guys who get accused of stuff and their careers get like destroyed, they are always like, I didn't do anything. And then there's never any evidence. Like, really, dude? I mean, like, where's the evidence?
Well, and then there's this doc that just came out.
I mean, look at Jerry Seinfeld. I mean, like, dude, the guy like openly was banging a 17-year-old, and he's like, dude, it's like, and then he did, dude.
Yeah. And he's like the old wise man of comedy.
It's so crazy to me.
Yeah.
It's so crazy
Elder
to me.
statesman.
And just Kevin Spacey's like, yeah, all those people that died that made accusations about me. Wow, lucky me, huh? that just worked out.
Yeah, and dude, there's this doc, and this interview I watched, he just kind of casually skips over this part that they have 10 or 11 more people in this documentary who came out and said, yeah, he was like sexually aggressive with me. These are all guys again.
Now, hold on. There's a difference between sexually aggressive.
They called him a sexual bully, is what I would say.
Like just bullying you into slopping his knob?
That's what
It is weird.
Yeah.
I just don't think gay guys Me Too each other. I just don't think you do it.
Well, if they do, you're fucked. I mean, that's how bad you were.
Johnny, I'm trying to get my seductive voice. Is it good?
That's meant to be seductive?
Yeah, this is my seductive voice.
It's not.
It's not seductive at all.
That's not seductive. No.
Come on, dog.
You got to go deep for the seduction.
I feel like I'm being seductive.
You got to go deep.
Johnny, I've had a weird week. I've had a
do you
really
mean?
weird week. Usually I come in here with a lot of love and a lot of energy, but I've had a weird week.
I feel like you got energy.
I've been battling the forces of evil.
That's every week for you.
Every week, I'm just like, will someone love me? Will anybody care for me?
What's that mean? What does that mean?
So where do you want to start, Johnny?
You talked about sharding. and
Yeah,
I gotta
Johnny,
hear
I
about
almost sharded the other day. That's why I was late for tinfoil hat.
that. Oh, really?
Yeah, dude. I was about to get on the 101, which is like the point of no return.
Yeah.
And
Once
I
you get on the
felt
freeway.
a fart coming, and I'm like, well, it could be a fart or it could be danger zone. And I felt
risk
it, and I was like, oh, that doesn't feel like a fart. And now I was committed, dude. I'm like,
Can't take the risk.
you can't take the risk because I'm in my new sponsees True Classic,
Sponsees,
right?
yeah.
Sponsor.
You
I
have
feel bad.
so much problem with shitting your pants. Like you
Well,
have a
I
lot of
also have a
problems.
problem with like a podcasting and getting words right, and then the guest is like correcting me on the words.
Yo.
I felt so bad.
Ian Carroll got you.
Ian Carroll's like cleaning up my grammar. I'm like, oh, I'm such a loser.
Yeah, he's like, you're mixing metaphors there. And then you did this thing where you're like, actually, I meant Potemkin Village and Panopticon
but I
Prison.
did. I really did mean it.
I don't think he bought that.
But I did mean that. I swear.
I believe you. I believe you.
Johnny, I did mean it.
I believe you.
It's a fake ass setup to make us think they're always watching. That's what I meant.
was
Okay.
funny, though.
Okay. So I'm in my True Classic. I'm excited to wear my cranberry sweatsuit because I'm really leaning into it.
Oh
dude.
yeah, you could have maybe gotten away with it if you're wearing black, but the cranberry, dude, you
No,
shot yourself.
I'll walk in here with a shart stain.
Yeah, it
you're
would show.
never let me hear the
Bro,
end of
fuck,
it.
no.
Bro, that'll be the beginning of every show. Did you shart again in your
The
in your True
Sharkmeister General,
Classic?
Sam Tripoli,
Yeah,
everybody.
dude. So I mean, like I was like, dude, I could roll the dice, think I just gave a really juicy fart, or I could turn around and go home and change it. And I went home and changed it.
Change it.
I went back to my house and got a new True Classic outfit on.
Wait, so you did shart?
I did chart.
I thought you were like, I can't
No,
trust
I
this fart.
sharted.
I gotta go back and
but
shit.
it wasn't like a monster chart. It was just enough to be like, I think I should change.
So you soiled your underwear, is what you're saying.
I would say it got a little dangerous. I had some butt juice rocking.
Why do you have so much loose stool?
Well, you know what it is, Johnny? I get so jacked on caffeine and stuff that I'm basically tweaking, and I'm just taking as much. Like, I'll go to jujitsu. I went to jujitsu, so I took my vitamins. I take this, like, whatever that black tar shit you take is that's like lava shit. And you take that, and then I took
No
a
idea.
5-star. I mean, a 5
Sheila Jeet is what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
Sheila
You still
Jeet.
take that, huh?
Yeah, I take that.
Where's the big book fall on Sheila Jeet? I'm wondering.
Dude, it's Mother Nature, dog. It's all good to go, bro.
Yeah, those cocoa leaves are too, aren't they?
Yeah, no. Well, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
We go deep, homeboy. Aaron, open your mind. Drink from the fountain of knowledge. There's lizard people everywhere. That's some interdimensional shit. Wake up, Aaron.
This is only the beginning.
Dude, you just blew my mind.
Tinfoil hack, tinfoil hack, tinfoil.